Well, good morning, everyone. Let's all find a seat, and we will begin. It's so good to have you all here, and special opportunity this is to celebrate the care of our members. And we will be doing this. We'll be doing this every month. We're going to do a member spotlight every month, and we have such a phenomenal congregation. Just to get to know people. I mean, you know how does you go to church and just a bunch of people there, but then you actually get to know people here and you find out some things that are absolutely remarkable. I have to say, when I was in Michigan, I was preaching to 2,200 people every Sunday, and it was just a mob. Now, I know people's stories. So when I'm saying one thing, I can't look at Jack. I have to look over here. As a pastor, it's a wonderful experience to know people's stories. And so I had this idea a couple years ago, and April is the one who really put legs on the idea. And so this is something that I think will be a great opportunity for all of us to learn about one another. Let's start our time with a word of prayer. Father, your gifts are overwhelming. You lavish so much grace upon all of us in so many ways. And it's the personal gifts that you've given to us, where you have given us the opportunity to share with others and to give back and to make our contributions in this life. Lord, as we consider that deep reality that all things have come to you and all things one day return to you, we are so grateful for the gifts that Jack and Lucille will this day share with us. We thank you in the name of Jesus Christ, who is our Savior and Lord. Amen. And now, April.
Thank you. Good morning. So good to see everybody. So Jack and Lucille have just been such a pleasure to get to know. And Jack and I got here Monday morning with a ton of slides and organized them all into the computer. His kids have sent some special video messages, which he hasn't seen yet, which will close out the presentation, and Lucille has a dance to show us as well. So I'm excited to hear the presentation and to enjoy an Iranian lunch afterwards, and thank you all for coming, and Jack and Lucille.
Am I on? No. Hello? Oh, am I on? Yep. Thank you, April. Thank you, Pastor. And you can sit over here. Well, I've never given a talk in my life before, so I'm a little bit nervous. But I want to start with some thank yous. And, you know, sometimes that's dangerous because you forget somebody. Oh, look who's coming in, my friend Bruce. I want to thank Pastor Kurt for everything he does for this church, including starting these off. And I want to thank Lisa, my daughter, for all her help in organizing the pictures. We're going to show you some of them are 30 and 40 years old. I want to definitely thank April O'Leary, who started Spotlight. April, thank you for your selfless contributions in getting me through the tough times. I want to thank Billy and Steve for the technical help in the face of challenges. And thank you, Mary and crew back there. Mary, come on out if you want. Oh, there she's back there. Mary is like one of a kind, and you'll enjoy a great luncheon because she's organized everything. Thank you, Mary, and thank you for your help. And finally, I want to thank Chris for being my psychotherapist during this whole thing. Anyway, I think I can start. Yeah. You know who these two kids are? My son John put this together. I think it's an amazing. He took a baby picture of me and a baby picture of Lucille and put it behind a backdrop of one of our blessings today. That's from 200 feet up in the air in Pelican Bay, sunsets that we enjoy, and we find God every night when we look at those. Isn't that beautiful, honey?
Yes, they're beautiful.
Aren't they beautiful?
Yeah.
And this is, I'm going to skip now 20 years forward. Although during those 20 years, I did live across the street from Peter Gilbody. You can't believe this. For 5 years, we lived across the street in Flushing, 50 feet apart from here to that back wall. In Flushing, and we didn't discover that until 55 years later or whatever it was, 60 years later when we met here, right here in the church, right here, Peter, remember? And thank you, Peter, for coming. I'm going to now jump 20 years 23 years from, oh, I didn't even explain this. This is what we gave each other as a gift on our 50th wedding anniversary. That's Lucille and I in a convent at a picnic. And you can't read the calendar, but it's May 1st, 1960, the most important day of our life. We were at a Christian youth club, and she was from an Italian neighborhood, I was from an Irish neighborhood, and never the twain can ever meet. That's like Romeo and Juliet, a West Side Story. My own family couldn't even accept that I was dating an Italian girl. People forget the way all this stuff started years and years ago. It always exists. But we fell in love on the first time we met and been together for 61 years since this day. And this is us on our wedding day, 3 years and 3 days after we met. We got married in Brooklyn at her church. She was a nurse during the early parts of our marriage. I was an engineer at Westinghouse, and what happened changed a lot. We started traveling right away. This photograph is the only one of its kind that exists, and it was a top secret photograph in its day. It's from a special ship to house that tower you see coming out of the front middle. That was where we developed and designed and tested the AN/SPG-59 radar. And then they told us, when it finally got up and working, John was born at the same time during this in Johns Hopkins University. And we bought this first house with the money I earned working overtime on that ship. And then we said we don't want any other house ever since, and now we're living in our 22nd house. Can you believe it? Or condo house. And she stayed, and I don't know why, but she stayed with me through all of it. Then the ship, in the lower left, they told us the ship was moving out to Hollywood, or north of Hollywood. I think Kurt knows the area, Port Hueneme in Oxnard, Hollywood, and that's where we took our little baby. You can see Lucille there with him with Mount Rushmore and the Badlands. We just drove across the middle of the northern part of the country out to California. And then we no sooner got there, we had John's first birthday, but 7-8 months later, they canceled the contract and they said, all right, pack your bags and head back home. So we headed back the southern route through the Grand Canyon and...
Down a tiny bit.
Is it too loud?
We're just getting some feedback.
Oh, well, I'm from New York. I like feedback. We traveled through the southern part of the beautiful, beautiful country and wound up in that same house, but 8-9 months later. And in this house, Lucille gave birth to 3 other kids. We had a family of 4 young kids, and it was a wonderful, wonderful time of our life at Gwynn Acres, right? Yeah. This is where the school bus stopped. You see the girl off to the left? A teenager? That's Lucille. And that's baby Valerie with her and baby Lisa in front. That's where the school bus stopped and where the kids went to elementary school. Every year we traveled to Ocean City, Maryland. We were all Catholics, so there was 15 families and 45 kids. And we took over a whole block. And we did that for 11 straight years. It was a magnificent time of our life this is the first 20 years. This is before it all started. Meantime, I was working as an engineer and then a project manager on tactical air defense systems, which we were selling around the world, and on air traffic control systems, which we also sold around the world. One of the areas we focused on was the Middle and Near East, those that were friendly to us and those who we could sell technology to and help preserve their airspace. Our greatest ally in the region was Iran, under the Shah of Iran. And it was decided that country where we had $1 billion worth of contracts for Westinghouse, that I would move in and take charge. I was still pretty young, but I was proud to be there, happy to be there. But I mean, that meant we had to uproot our 4 little kids and get on a plane and go there. So Lucille took the kids for vaccinations. There was no COVID then, but they got all the other ones. And we got them passports, and we headed out. We headed out on Pan Am one night. I mean, it was strange taking 4 kids and uprooting them from friends in school, but that's what we did. And they told us at the time, if you have a strong family, it'll get stronger through this experience. If you have a kind of problems in your family, it's going to be a disaster. Well, fortunately, we were a very strong family. So we're going to travel a third of the way around the world from the United States to Iran. We decided to take the kids in easy, rather than see a totally foreign culture, Muslim culture. So we started out in London for a while, a couple of days, whatever. We traveled down to Spain, to Mallorca, and we traveled into Athens. So it was a great experience for the kids, very young. The youngest doesn't even remember this, I'm sure, Valerie. And then we wound up here, and you're going to see a couple of these pictures coming up. This was at the time called the Shayard Monument, very famous, named for the Shah, the King of Kings, the Shah of Iran. And if you're going to exit or into the country, this is the first thing you saw at the airport. So that's the first visual we have of Iran. We searched for, I think 2 weeks. We lived in the Hilton Hotel, and we searched for 2 weeks. How are we going to find a house to live in there? That's not that easy. And we found this beautiful house up in northern Tehran, and we moved in. And I got to tell you, a lot of people don't believe this, but I have proof. Our property, our wall, backed up just across from the wall of Niagara Palace where the Shah and his wife lived. So we were next door neighbors. But I don't remember ever going over there to get any sugar, and he certainly didn't come to my place, so whatever. But a lot of people think it's not possible we live next to the Shah and Iran, so I brought proof with me today. He and I were fishing buddies. And if that isn't the worst Photoshop you ever saw in your life, I'll show you one better. 20 years later, I started fishing with somebody else, Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods, my hero. Anyway, here are the 4 kids, and I said you have to be a happy family to exist there, and you can see the smiles on their faces. I know they were afraid. We were afraid at certain times during the Revolution, but we bonded as a family. We didn't have any friends or church or anything like that there, so we bonded. We were living in a Muslim country, and everything we did together as a family. We had our own swimming pool, which is beautiful. I mean, and that's also a live shark back there, if you believe the other 2 photos. These are my 3 daughters, Karen, Lisa, and Valerie at the pool. Here's Lisa and Valerie on our rooftop. We had a 3-story house and a rooftop where we could have picnics up there and all. The kids did snowball fights up there, and people saying, "But I thought you lived in Iran." Right behind us were those mountains, the Goraz Mountains, and they were snow covered much of the year. You can ski in Tehran, Iran, 10 months of the year. It's a mile-high city like Denver, Colorado. So they had good experiences, and we had this delicious food. You're going to get a taste of Iranian food. I hope you can stay for lunch and taste some Iranian food. It is so delicious. If I was on death row, that's what I would order right there. I love the taste. It's very unique spices, a lot of saffron and things like that. This is a picture I found on the internet. It would have been illegal to take this photograph. It was a top secret site in the mountains of Tehran, above Mehrabad Airport. We were putting 17 of these sites all around the Afghanistan border, the Russian border, Uzbekistan, looking across to the Persian Gulf to the Middle East, and looking south into the Gulf as well. So with the help, it was a commercial contract with Westinghouse. Probably would have been $1 billion today. I don't remember the numbers back then. But that's what we were going to do there, and we were supposed to be there for 5 years. We didn't last 5 years, believe me. This is some of the crews I have. I had great teams everywhere I went. We hired people to build those radars for us all over Iran. This is a photograph of 2 people. One on the left is our gardener. So he said, "Why the heck did you have a gardener? You had 4 kids and all." Well, servants came with the houses. One house we looked at had 12 servants living in tents in the backyard. They were included in the rent. You had no choice. If you took the house, you took the servants. So that was our gardener. But the fellow on the right, the handsome guy, he is our driver Harris, or was our driver Harris. He was a Christian. And I hired him, and he became our rock. He just helped us through the entire, whatever it was, 14 months that we lived there. Why did we have a driver? This is a shot from the year I was there. This is another shot, but it doesn't show you everything yet. Along the sidewalks and wandering into that traffic were sheep, goats, and camels, all marked in colors to show the flock they belonged to. So you put that together, and I think you understand why we had a driver. And we were not even allowed to drive in Tehran, the Westerners. There's the car we had, an American car we bought from the U.S. Air Force site there. And there's Harris with my 3 daughters near their school Remember that? Yeah. And then Harris took us all around to all the shops. You can't even imagine the shops in Iran, the gold, the jewelry, and the trinkets and all. The carpets, this is in what's called the Big Bazaar. It's 4 stories or 5 stories underground in downtown Tehran. And it's just carpet and gold everywhere you go. It's just amazing. I was there buying carpets when there were some soldiers shooting, looking for infidels, and we hid behind some of the stacks of those carpets, me and Heros. This is the site you would see along the roadway. There's some carpets, I don't know if you can see them, underneath those people. They picnicked on the side of the road. This was Iran in 1978. I'm going to show you Iran in 1979, and you're not going to believe it. My kids rode camels when they got up on camels. This is right near their school. The tent behind is a Gashkai tent, a tribal, a nomadic tent and they had schools in those tents as well. That's where some of the people lived. From there, we were able to go to the Soviet Union when it was still the Soviet Union, and this is St. Basil's in the square, Red Square in Moscow. And we were able to get up there. I could never have gotten a visa from the United States to get in there, but it was it was Easter, our first Easter in Tehran, and we headed up to Moscow. Yeah. And this is in Leningrad. I think it might be at the Hermitage. It might be at the Hermitage Museum. There's Lucille and the 4 kids with some tour guides up in the Hermitage. While this was all going on, civil unrest was getting completely out of control. It had started just months after we got there. We arrived in the fall of 1977, and throughout '78, even as early as January, there were problems. There were riots in the streets from workers, strikes. You notice here, like you'll see all over the Middle East, not just the Near East. It's all men in that picture. But anyway, it got worse and worse. And then in August, I'll never forget this day, the jihadists in Mujahideen, they burned a theater down and killed 377 people inside the theater because it was showing Western movies. The revolution was against the United States and Westernization of Iran rather. 200 others escaped. It was the third biggest tragedy like this in the history of the world. And we were at the office the next day, and I'll never forget, I said, oh my God, this is really getting bad. But during the earlier terrorist attacks, smaller attacks, the Shah would put people in prison. He didn't do it this time. The Carter administration got with him and said, let's just give these people a chance. They really just want to be heard. And so they just heard them. And then all of a sudden we had bombings in Western restaurants in Tehran, and churches, Christian churches, were burned to the ground. And on September 7th, that was 3 weeks after that fire. Are you stepping on me? 3 weeks after the fire, it was called Black Friday, and a few days later, martial law was declared. And that means for the last 3 months we were there, we had no electricity at night. We weren't allowed out after sunset, or you could be taken away. So it was a tough 3 months. This is the real startup of the revolution. This is what we were seeing downtown. I never showed my kids any of this. Lucille didn't see any of this because it was frightening. And the face there, that's Ayatollah Khomeini. Nobody knew who Khomeini was. The young Iranian kids didn't know him. He was out of Iran for, I think 40 years. He'd been driven out. He was now 80 years old. And the joke was that the kids didn't know how to pronounce the KH in what's called Khomeini. They called him Khomeini. But that's what we saw, and that's what happened. And the mullahs came out in the street, and the one below you can barely see is a mosque where they all rioted. Around Tehran, at that time, there were 5 million people, maybe 10 million people living in the outskirts, around Tehran plus the outskirts, and they had 20,000 mosques in Tehran, every street corner. And these are some of the bigger ones, but every night we had to listen to wailing and noises and music from the mosques. There was no electricity, so they carried up battery-operated transmitters, and they just put music out. And it was kind of terrifying. And then one night, it got so terrifying because they say 1 million people got up and into the rooftops in addition to the mosques and started wailing. And I didn't know what they were wailing, and I was scared. Lucille and the kids and I were writing Christmas cards by candlelight in our kitchen because we had no electricity again. So I left them there, closed the door to keep the sound down. Went next door to my next door neighbor. He was a 4-star general in the Savak, which is like the Secret Service. I pounded on his door, he opened the door. I'd been to his house for dinner, he didn't mind, we had been to his daughter's wedding. I said, General, what are they wailing? What's going on? And he said, I don't hear anything. And he slammed the door in my face. And I knew for the first time in my life what the word infidel meant. It was pretty terrifying. And we knew that we were at the beginning of the end. So at that time, most Americans, what they call unnecessary Americans, were ordered to leave Iran. We had about 1,000 of our Westinghouse people and their families and friends who had been translators and everything else. But most of them, the vast majority, 95%, lived down in Shiraz or somewhere in Isfahan. And we got evacuation planes to the airports down there. And every single one got out safe. It was wonderful. But we were not to leave. So some of the senior managers and all stayed. And then it got worse and worse and worse. I got a note thrown over a wall one day that I'll never forget. I wish I still had the note. It was tied to a rock, and it didn't hit me, but it came close, and I picked it up, and the note said, Yankee, go home. And Yankee was Y-O-N-K-E. I'll never forget that. Yankee, go home. We know where you are. We know where you live. We know your children. We love your children. But if you're not out of here within a week, I wouldn't tell you what the rest of the note said. But basically, it meant my kids would be killed. We went down to the embassy, I gave them that, as other people did, and they said, oh, no, don't worry, they're just a few radicals, extremists. But we decided it was time to go. So we packed up whatever we had in the house, gave it away, tried to sell things. You couldn't get 5 cents on the dollar during the Revolution for American furniture, remember those days? That was amazing. And we had sent three crates of trinkets and things we had bought. We sent those back on one of the evacuation planes, but we never saw that stuff again. It didn't arrive. But we did pack our car with 13 small suitcases. Thankfully, they had a huge boot. And with Harris, thank you, Harris, we traveled off to the airport while sun was still out. This is the last scene we saw of Iran. That's the Shayard Monument again. But I want you to look at that monument right now. And this was in January of 1979. And I'm going to show you a shot taken 3 days after we left at the same monument. 3 days after we left. The Shah left right after us, I think 3 weeks after. And then a few weeks later, Ayatollah Khomeini, who probably couldn't even remember when he stepped foot on Iranian soil, he stepped down on a plane from Paris. He was living in Paris. He had been living in Iraq, but Saddam Hussein kind of evicted him. And he arrived as the hero of the revolution. So in a matter of weeks, the man on the right, he's called to them the Shah, the King of Kings, a good friend of the United States of America. He was sent packing, and the guy on the left became the ruler of a theocracy. So it was no longer a civilized government. We actually had a parliament, but the theocrats took over. Here's some pictures of what that meant. I actually have pictures going back to 20s and 30s. Iran was always very modern. No. Women could, well, they did just like that. The two pictures at the bottom are, if you could look at those, that could be 1978 and 1979.
Sorry.
That's okay. And this is a picture on the left. The two pictures are from 1978, the year we were there. Those are the kids, the girls in schools. They didn't go to school with boys, but they went to school, full education. And on the right is 6 months later in Tehran. It's just mind-boggling. Here's a shot from one of the restaurants we used to go to where music was played. Lucille's going to dance a little bit later, Iranian music and dance. What's the shot at the bottom? You may remember it. When the students barraged the Iranian embassy and took it over. The United States embassy in Tehran and took it over. They took 66 hostages, I knew some of them, for 444 days. And America was crippled, handcuffed. There's nothing we could do about it. Then in the first week of 1980, actually the day of Ronald Reagan's inauguration, they returned to the United States of America. 15 of them had died while imprisoned. Now today, I'm only going to show this just because I couldn't believe a few weeks ago as I watched the television set. The picture at the top is a shot inside the presidential palace in Afghanistan. And the picture below is the women on the streets now in Afghanistan. So I just pray that I pray for those people. I want every one of you to pray for those people in Afghanistan. But I'll go back to our own escape from Iran, that horrible night. This is what it was like in the airport. Somehow, and I have no recollection, Harris got all of our 13 pieces of luggage. He gave me 13 baggage claims, and he handed them to me. And then we have never seen him again. We have never been able to contact Harris again. He was a Christian, and I guess I really don't want to know what happened to he and his family. But this was the scene at the airport. We had 2 tickets that we had somehow gotten. There was no computers anywhere in the country working anyway. And I had 2 tickets to Pan Am. So I went up to the Pan Am, and I had a credit card. I went up to the Pan Am desk somehow. I had to physically keep my kids in one place, and Lucille took care of them, thank God. And I found that Pan Am had canceled all flights out of Iran permanently. I didn't know that. So somehow I moved over to the Air India desk. I didn't care where a plane was going. I just wanted to get my kids on a plane. So we went over to the Air India desk, and I was bigger than anyone on the line, and I just pushed my way up, and I flashed a couple $100 of American money. That's how we got out. We bribed our way out with a credit card, handed the $200 to the ticket guy, and he said he sold us the last 6 tickets out of Iran that night. We got on Air India and just took a deep breath and thank God that we were on that plane. The next day, 36 hours later, this is what we saw coming through an archway in Agra, south of Delhi. That's the most beautiful man-made building, I think, on the planet. I'm sure it is, the Taj Mahal in Agra. It was amazing after all that we've gotten through to see something this beautiful. Here's the kids and Lucille in front of that magnificent building. But we also saw the poverty in India, and my kids learned from the poverty of India. They spoke of it. These are kids at a garbage dump looking for some food. We saw other kids I wouldn't even take a picture of with their bellies all distended, tiny kids with only like a little loincloth around them. It was terrible. From there, we headed up to Nepal, to Kathmandu, and at 4 o'clock in the morning, we got in a little car, all of us, and we watched the sunrise over Mount Everest. Now, I did not take this photo. When we looked across Mount Everest, we couldn't see Mount Everest. We saw the Himalayas, unbelievable sight. And they said, well, Mount Everest is in the middle of this thing, but it went as far as the eye could see. And all the mountains are about the same size. Mount Everest is just a little bit bigger. We then hopped puddle jumpers all over Southeast Asia. We could not get back in the United States for a month for legal reasons that I don't want to go into, but it had to do with Westinghouse. And I also was told at a moment's notice that if the revolution somehow got corrected, I was supposed to head right back there. And because we had very, very, very high dollar contracts, and we were sued for leaving because we never declared war on Iran. So we were sued, and it took 15 years, and we lost every penny in Hague, that we had no right to leave those contracts behind. Then we headed. This is the man who helped us live through the revolution. Is Muhammad. He was cooking and cleaning for us in our home in Tehran, and he invited us. He had gotten out in I think another plane somehow weeks before we got out, and he invited us down to Sri Lanka, which you ever get to see. You want to see peaceful life. These people, they have a smile on their face. You may have known it as Ceylon. It's Sri Lanka, south of India, and we spent a whole week or maybe 8-9 days there. I don't know. Seeing all of that, and then we just hopped all around, back and forth, all around Southeast Asia. I'm going to flip through some of these, but we saw the sights, and I don't even remember whether these are in Thailand or Indonesia. And I think these must be Thailand. Some of these shots. Here's one of the temples. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's a Buddha. You see lots of Buddhas all over the place there. And this is one of the marketplaces we went through. The kids had been on camels, but now it was time for elephants. And here's one of the streets. I can't even recognize that language. I'm not sure where it was. This is the famous gold Buddha. It's solid gold, they say. I don't know, but that's in a temple also in Thailand. We also got involved with monkeys and cows. You don't mess with those guys because they are allowed to come down on your table while you're eating and take the food off the table. And they're holy, they're sacred, and you do not mess with them. Same with the cows. The cows are not to be touched, the cattle. Here are the kids. I said they were on camels. Now all of a sudden they were on elephants in Southeastern Asia. We saw snake charmers, which I didn't even know were real. But watching that guy take the tops off and then play that little instrument of his, and those snakes would come up dancing. It was amazing. The kids had fun. I know they have memories of this. Thankfully, we have pictures to cement those memories. Sometimes we slept under mosquito nets in parts of it. That's the only way you could avoid the mosquitoes at night. And then we exited Asia and headed over to the Philippines, where we also had a woman who worked in our house, and she took us around for a wonderful, wonderful mini vacation in the Philippines. The kids loved that, I think. And then we exited the Philippines and entered the United States for the first time in 14, 15 months in Hawaii. Right? Came back through Hawaii and then California. And then we moved into a couple of different houses, and while we were building this house in Howard County, Maryland, a beautiful home that we loved and where the kids really grew up. We expanded our family. The gal in the dark hair in the middle, below Valerie, that's Claudia from Mexico. She became our daughter. We adopted Matzera. Her name was Marcella, but the kids couldn't say it, so we called her Matz. She was from Colombia, the one in red with her head against Lucille. These were exchange students that we brought in, the kids brought in, and they became parts of our families. Their grandkids call us Lulu and Grandpa today. Here's another girl, the dark-haired girl in the middle, long-haired. That's Ursula from Germany. She became our daughter also. They all call us Mom and Dad to this day. And then it became time, we were empty nesters. All the kids had grown up. They were off in college, and we moved to a little apartment for some place to stay and all, for two of our girls to be with us for a while in downtown Baltimore. During this time, we launched what was called globalization. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It means going global by going local. And the people in Congress to this day don't understand this. The only way you do business around the world is with a local presence. You can't just build a product in Maryland somewhere and ship it over, because there's training involved. Even with your iPhone, you need to bring your iPhone somewhere. There's training, there's services and so forth. So you need to set up service companies at least, and construction companies all around the world. And then I spent 20 years of my life just hopping. And I came back, and every time I came back to a smile. We set up companies in every country of, almost every country of Europe, not the parts of the USSR. We've set up companies in almost every country of South America and most countries in Asia. It was amazing. That's why we got to travel to 75 different countries. One of the countries we traveled to was China. This is an amazing, amazing site if you ever get a chance, or maybe some of you have been there. This is the Great Wall of China, and it's just mind-boggling. We got married there for our 25th wedding anniversary. That's nun on my left, on Lucille's left, and a priest on my right, well, actually an ex-priest on my right. And we did the marriage ceremony and our vows in form of Taoism, a Chinese religion. It was a beautiful experience. But getting there was hard. You had to climb that Great Wall. Maybe a couple of young people in this room could do it, but I couldn't do it anymore. That is one difficult climb. This was my passport that my corporation gave me in my retirement. It was called The Book because it had 4 different sections. It was about a ½ inch thick with multiple stamps from those 75 countries that we traveled through. Then they thankfully moved us to Lucille and I to London, because the travel was much easier. Why is travel easier from London? This is the map of the world, and from London, in the very, very center, you can reach any city in the world with non-stop flights, even back then. So we moved to London. Here we are, a British couple. And here's Lucille with the ticket above. This is, you can't read it, but that's an invitation by the Queen of England to be at one of our coronation ceremonies. I never saw the Queen, but she did, and she bowed, but you couldn't take cameras in. But thankfully, we do have one picture of us. I'm looking at Shirley. One picture of us with the Queen, of her with the Queen. This is Lucille with the Queen of England. And that was taken, Shirley Pestle took this shot just a few months ago at the tea shop on Fifth Avenue. Queen looks pretty good in cardboard, doesn't she? Of course, Lucille always looks beautiful.
Yeah.
During that time, we traveled every nook and cranny of England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. And the very, very far lower left-hand corner, you can't see it. There's 4 fingers stepping out. My family was from the Ring of Beara, below the Ring of Kerry, and we got to go to my grandmother's house, where my great-great-grandfather built the house, and also went to see my grandfather's foundation. It's no longer a house. So I really got back into my roots. I'm an O'Sullivan by my mother's side. Every time someone came to visit us, we took them. They would come in on a red eye at 4 or 5 in the morning, so it was pretty annoying if we came straight to our house. So we would send the car and send them to this magnificent place here, and that would be their first scenes of England, Stonehenge. Now you can't even see it. There's walls and fences around it. We traveled the world, Lucille and I. I'm going to just flip through these. Paris, back again to China, the Li River, Germany, Taiwan, not sure, Scotland maybe, Malaysia, China, or that might be Japan. And also we got to get in the gondola on the river, on the waters of Venice. And if you heard it's romantic, it's really romantic. Here's the Trevi Fountain in Rome. I don't even know. This is also Japan, I think. Here's one of my business meetings. I put this one in here for one reason. You see the girl in the yellow jacket in the front? That's Lucille. Look at me. I'm in the back row, and I was the boss. She ran everything. You. Just a few. There's Lucille posing in her Chinese jacket. You remember that jacket? Of course, we saw Normandy. I know some of you in the room have seen it. If you haven't, you better bring tissues when you go there. This is the cemetery of Normandy. Then for years, even started during the realm of Gorbachev. I worked under Gorbachev and then under Yeltsin with the head of the civil aviation there. At the time we started, those were the air routes that you could get. So you couldn't get anywhere around the world without going around Russia and China. And we spent 5 years putting together routes and packages and laws and regulations and insurance packages to allow the airlines to cut over that red area and cut down global travel significantly. And here's one of the great experiences of my life. In 1993, January, I was named to chair the President's Council by President Clinton and President Mubarak, the two in the front. And I got to spend 8 years with those guys in the front row and all the guys behind. That's King Hussein on the left. That's Shimon Peres on the right, my friends. That's the way off in the right corner, you can barely see him. That's Yasser Arafat. But we will work with everybody behind us from a dozen different Arab countries. This was the land we decided we were going to try to create a sustainable peace throughout from all the way from Morocco to Pakistan, if we could commercialize the peace process. By that I mean, if we can get the companies in all those lands to depend on each other financially, then war wouldn't make any sense. We had some modest successes in Egypt. My favorite place, I go back there any day. This is Israel. I have so many experiences I'd love to share with you about Israel. But it's one of the most amazing places on the planet. This is Petra. You've all heard about it. In the Bible, you've heard about the eye of a needle. Well, to get into this city, you have to crawl through. You have to take on a camel, bend your head down, and get through what's called the eye of a needle. That's where it comes from, to get into the city. So that the city was never attacked because it's pretty hard to run through with camels full speed into the eye of a needle. Your heads would get knocked off. This is me and my chairman with one of the Air Force commanders. This is Dubai, which you've all heard of. This is where I spent most of my time in the UAE. This is Abu Dhabi. This is Turkey, where we work. That's the great mosque in Turkey. And this is, as you know, people say that's where the rock came down to Adam, and where Abraham may have tried to sacrifice his son. This is Saudi Arabia. We put the same kind of systems we were putting into Iran all over Saudi Arabia. They became the best ally we could find after Iran fell. And then we had Morocco, where Lucille danced in Morocco. She's going to dance for you. We celebrated her 50th birthday, and this is an invitation from the King of Morocco to a dinner. It was a magical night, and some of the cabinet fed you with their fingers. Remember, they put the balls of rice in your mouth. This is me. I dressed for the occasion wherever I went, so I became Arab. This is one of our favorite photos in our life. That's King Hussein, who Lucille and I both love. Behind him is Queen Noura holding the umbrella of Jordan. We travel every desert from the Sahara to the Saudi Arabia and the UAE. This is south of Tunisia. And then I got to I got to travel to Mount Nebo. This is a Christian memorial to Moses in honor of the Exodus and the Ten Commandments. And then, so that's the second 20 years of our life I just flashed through. And then it happened. Westinghouse crashed in 1999, 2000. It was no more. We changed our name, as you may know, to CBS Broadcasting. We bought the debt and shut down. I spent the last 2 years of my life shutting down everything I had set up all around the world. It was sad. But this girl kept me together. This is the rock. I didn't want to retire early, but this is the rock that held me together. And we bought a house near north of Georgetown, and I took some consulting gigs and worked for a couple of technology companies for a while. During this last 20 years of our life, all our kids got married, and we had every year a grandchild, every single year for 9 straight years. We now have 12. And the horse in the back of that picture, we bought that in London, had it made for us. It's called the Hope Horse. The name is hanging around it today. It's Hope, and we were hoping for grandchildren, and I think the horse overperformed. Lucille made blankets, beautiful blankets for each of the grandchildren, and she entertained our family during all the tough times, whenever. And she, by the way, she did this stuff around the world with kings and queens. And Lucille, she's one of a kind. There she is. And this is something she did at every dinner party. If it got boring or business, she would reach under the table with a chocolate candy wrapper and put it on her teeth. And people would laugh hysterically when she came up on the table. And she had everybody else at the table doing the same thing. This is my entertainer.
Yeah, right.
She set tables like you can't imagine and set food like you can't imagine. And then I met in 2008, end of 2008, my brother by a different mother, Byron Donalds. I love this man so much. And we tried to win the House seat here in 2012. We won in Collier, but we lost in Lee County to Trey Radel. But we did form grassroots movements here. I was the first president. Byron replaced me. And we went to the Capitol. We didn't crash the Capitol. We didn't do anything wrong. We just pleaded, stop spending money. You can't spend money because you're going to condemn future generations. At that time, the national debt was 10 trillion. It's 30 trillion today. So we didn't do very well. Here's Byron. Oh, did I skip one? No, I didn't. This is Byron at our wedding anniversary party. And then Byron and I joined forces with Kurt Clausen. I'm sure some of you in the room know Kurt. He became our congressman for 3 years, 2014, 15, 16, into 17 rather. And I had the great honor of serving in the U.S. Capitol as his consigliere for 3+ years. It was a wonderful experience, but I did learn the good, the bad, and the very ugly of politics in the process. I still communicate with Byron regularly. He's now our congressman, and this man is going to, I know shouldn't say anything politically, but this man is going to impact this country. Here is, I'll bring it up to date now, because if you're a Christian, you know that the best is yet to come. We have crosses to bear. Everyone in this room has a cross to bear. And Lucille and I have cross we bear. But now I've spent the last year writing my first novel. My manuscript is done, and I'm going to convince April to publish it for me. Lucille, she's got her own little business going. She and her caregiver make jewelry and blankets, and they're beautiful. They do these for the poor children in Immokalee, and they're just spectacular. And she loves doing this. And we're now going to do on Fifth Avenue, I think, a little booth called Lulu's Boutique. This is with Home Life Health, the caregivers we use. And she's going to be out there with a violin player who we work with, selling her jewelry. Here's a picture my son did that I love. He took a picture of her with her jewelry on the TV, and then he took a picture of her holding it. Now, I put this picture up for one reason. You all know Mike Lindell, don't you? The My Pillow guy? She's replacing Mike Lindell. This is the My Jewelry, my blanket guy. So now I'm going to close with 3 things that really, 3 blessings that we have in our life as we stand before you today, and you are part of it. All of you are part of that blessing. First, we live 200 feet up in the air, and we come out some days to our balcony and we just gasp at the beauty that God has created. We find renewal every night in these and crazy sunsets. I don't think they exist many other places in the world over the Gulf of Mexico. And then we have this, but not the building, of course, but every one of you and the other 150, 200 members of our family. You are family to us. You've helped me through a disease when I literally thought I was dying. Kurt led prayers for me every day, every Sunday, and every day. I guess we were on the prayer list. And now we're all praying. Lucille and I are both on the prayer list now, right? Yeah. And then we have this, the third blessing. That little group that we took to Tehran, we're now 22 strong. I know we're going to get bigger with new marriages and great-grandchildren, I hope. But these are the blessings in our life. And I haven't seen this, Billy, but I just clicked this. The kids couldn't be here.
Naples Community Church. This is Jack and Lucille's son, John, coming to you from Ellicott City, Maryland, where they spent much of their adult life raising us kids before they moved to sunny Florida in a new home. And I know how much they love the Naples Community Church community, how much you've embraced them and the love you show them. Just want to say thank you, Kurt. I'm so glad that you guys found each other.
Hi, Naples Community Church. This is Lisa. Hi, Mom and Dad. Thank you for sharing what a wonderful world it can be and how it can even be more wonderful when you're surrounded by wonderful people. Sending you much love.
Hi, Mom and Dad. Hi, Naples Community Church. This is Valerie up in Annapolis, Maryland. I'm the youngest of Jack and Lucille's 4 children. And Mom and Dad, I'm just so excited that you were able to share your journey through life together, the many, many amazing experiences that you've had, the exciting things, the not so exciting things, and that you were just able to share how God has just been by your side each and every step of the way. Naples Community Church, thank you so much for filling the gap while we can't be there, for loving on my mom and dad, and just for being Christ in their lives. We're so grateful for you. Hope you've enjoyed the evening, and may God just richly bless each and every one of you.
Hi, Naples Community Church. Jack and Lucille's daughter, Karen, from Charleston, South Carolina. I have visited you many times. I'm glad you got to learn a lot more about my mom and dad and their exciting life and just the way that God has provided for them all along the way. We are so thankful that our parents are a part of such an amazing family, a church community, and that just they've been blessed by your friendship. Thank you for the many ways that you have reached out to our parents and cared for them and blessed them in so many ways.
Now we'll take any questions if you have any, and then we'll, remember, no, thank you.
Great job. If you have a question, if you could raise your hand and I'll bring the mic over, and that way they can hear you on live stream as well.
That's good. Because questions are the only thing stopping us from lunch. None?
So when you were in England...
Hold on one
I
second.
can't see. Yeah.
When you were in England, you lived on a street that Di lived on, is that correct?
Yeah, we lived, we had an incredible 2-story high condo with a rooftop terrace, and we looked across into Hyde Park, and where Diana and the boys were living after Princess Diana was ostracized from the family. So she lived there, and she walked down the street to the same pizza house that we went to. She didn't have any security because she was basically thrown out of the family, as you may remember. Yes?
I am overdone on all the things that you've done. I was fortunate enough some years back, though, when I was working out of the Navy for Honeywell, and the Egyptians wanted some submarines in the Mediterranean, and I made 19 trips to Egypt, and it was at a time when it was wide open and everybody was dressed like we are here.
Yeah, I remember.
And I can't resist the things that you've done. It's amazing.
Did you get to Tut's tomb? Did you get to King Tut's tomb in the Valley of the Kings?
Did you get to King Tut's tomb?
Tutankhamun? No?
Did you
One of the
see?
things we
No, I didn't get to that.
Yeah, we got down to the tombs. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Egypt was an amazing place.
I got out in the grass and up where the
Yeah, now they're
where the pines are. Right.
Now
Here, I'll give it back.
I think there's 80 or 90 million now, and 3/4 of them aren't even educated in Egypt. Yes, please. Am I still turned on? Yeah.
I have a question. First, a comment. I've never sat before a world travelogue before, but this was certainly one that I'll never forget. It was a wonderful travelogue of the world and your experiences. And I wonder about your faith journey. Your journey throughout this world is fascinating. It's amazing. It's instructive. It's history. And I'd just like to hear a little bit about the journey of faith from the beginning until now. And thank goodness for Naples Community Church and how it's helping to fill the.
I should have brought that up a little bit along the way, but Lucille and I are part of the second largest, were part before we came here, of the second largest religion in the world, fallen away Catholics. We saw enough in our journey. We were Catholics from the time we were born, but that's not really the way we were brought up. We weren't really Christians. We weren't even allowed to read the Old Testament, as you know. That didn't exist, just the New Testament. So somehow, somewhere in the middle of all those years, we just got up and walked out of the church. I don't want to tell the whole story, but we had a pastor that was a womanizer and an alcoholic, and it was just an ugly experience. And we sort of lost it for a while. And we traveled to different churches and came down here and traveled to different churches, tried to find some place that would give us the spiritual life that we had somehow undiscovered or never discovered, perhaps. And then 6-7 years ago, we walked through that front door here. And Lucille was a Bible studier and more in her faith than I was over the years, but not me so much. And my book is about this, and one that April's going to publish for me. I was consumed with my career. I mean, it was consuming, all consuming. I didn't go to churches in any of those countries. Most of them didn't have access to Catholic churches, and we weren't part of any church because we were traveling around so much. So then we came, Lucille and my daughter Karen, Valerie helped us find a community church, and we watched Pastor Kurt on the internet. And we walked through that door, and I'll never forget that day when we walked in that door, because we experienced something we had never experienced in any church or any experience like this in the world. And Kurt talked about it. You go into church with 1,000 people and all this, you're lost in the crowd. We walked in here, and all we saw was smiles and people coming over to welcome us, and we didn't even know them. And this church has really made us fuller, deeper Christians, which we are every day now, and pray every day and read the Bible every day. This church did this for us, not the church, the people in this church, and we are grateful to each and every one of you.
I agree with Johnny. I'm overwhelmed. I've heard some of your story before, and just it is phenomenal. And again, comments, questions. I mean, there's so many things that I just want to sit down and pick your brain with. But the few things, Acts 17:26 says that God determines the exact times and places where people should live. You've been in 75 different countries. You live next door to Peter. How God brings that down and you don't find that out till 50 years drive is amazing. But one of the things, and I don't know, folks, I found it incredible when we were talking about the what went on with the Abraham Accords, how, I don't know if you said that, it mentioned it a little bit more, but you know these people. I mean, you know that you're very humble, and he was joking about, the picture with the Queen, but you had a text conversation just last year, didn't you, with
Sheikh Mohammed.
I mean, that is phenomenal, how God has brought the high capacity people to Naples Community Church for some reason. And I don't know what God's doing, but I think he's doing a lot of stuff. And I'm just so grateful that he's brought amazing people. And I look forward to hearing the rest of the stories. And they're not stories, it's truth. And we are so blessed to have you in this congregation.
Thank you. I'm faking the humility a bit, by the way.
Any other questions?
anymore because we have another treat right before lunch. Oh, there is one more, Pastor Kurt.
Yes, before the revolution in Iran, did you sense any kind of a ferment? Was this anticipated in any way?
It was, and thank you for that question because I didn't bring that up. Literally for, I would say, a year or two before, modernization and certainly westernizing a place like Iran or Afghanistan is literally impossible, or Egypt. It can't be done. And there's some very naive people through the years in our own government, good people, who think if we could just, we just go in there and teach them how it all really works, get them having cell phones and all sorts of beautiful dresses and gowns, everything's gonna be fine. It doesn't work, Kurt. So 2 or 3 years before, even before we moved there, you could feel the tension in the air, and it was like cutting with a knife because there was so much poverty amidst all, you saw the beautiful house we lived in. There was no middle class, there was poverty, and then there was us. And it's not sustainable anywhere in the world.
But the question that just popped into my mind was, what gave Westinghouse the confidence to really go into Iran with some of this fermenting?
Confidence? We went there to make money.
Yeah, no. But with the atmosphere, it could become explosive.
Well, I talked about this idea of globalization, and we didn't create that word. There was another firm that did it. But we knew that if we wanted to grow beyond our marketplace in the United States, we had to go first where there was a need for products, but secondly where there was money. And Iran was very, very oil rich. I don't think it was about confidence. I think it was about, hey, here's where we're going to have to grow the corporation. And not just my corporation, lots of Western corporations. But that added to the revolution because there were more and more Americans on the street. And when I said we weren't allowed to buy food during the revolution, they could spot a Christian at 50 yards. They just know. And you weren't allowed out in the street. They didn't want us. They didn't want westernization, going back to Kurt's question. They didn't want that. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Jack and Lucille. Thank you so much. I think you've really touched our hearts this morning.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. So I got one more treat. If there's no more questions, Lucille's going to dance for us, okay? This is Lucille. She's been a dancer, making up songs, singing. She probably could compete with Dawn, I'm not sure. But this is her as a ballet star in her own little apartment. I don't know how old she is here, but I think she started dancing at 6 or 7. And she's been dancing ever since. And now she's going to teach you briefly, and anybody can get up on the way back to lunch. She's going to teach you how to dance Iranian style. Go ahead. You got to go ahead. Come on. All right, who's going to get up and dance with her? Come on. Okay, lunch. Oh, she still wants to dance. You give me up.
Thank you to Jack and Lucille for a beautiful presentation. Everyone is invited to enjoy lunch. Thank you to Mary Rush for organizing the lunch back there, and another great member spotlight. Thank you.
دلم گم شده پیداش